Corporal Bill Hatton. A U.S. Marine corporal admitted that he and other Americans fed Vietnamese children peanut butter cracker sandwiches with trioxane heat tablets hidden inside. The tablets burned the lining of their throats and even burned holes in their stomachs, as trioxane is a solid fuel tablet from military rations used to heat food, and it is not meant to be eaten. The corporal's name was Bill Hatton, and his statement went further than just the heat tablets. He said his unit threw cases of C rations off moving trucks at women and children. He described how they fired mad minutes from their position, Amiriyah shelter bombing. At 4:30 in the morning on the 13th of February 1991, 2 U.S. Air Force stealth bombers dropped laser-guided bombs on public shelter number 25 in Baghdad's Amiriyah district. The shelter had been built during the Iran-Iraq War and was used by families for protection. On that night, it was crowded with hundreds of civilians, including women and children, trying to survive the Gulf War air campaign. The first bomb cut through 9.8 feet of reinforced concrete before exploding. Minutes later, the second bomb followed the same path and detonated inside. People outside heard screams for several minutes, then silence. Inside, more than 400 civilians were killed. Those on the upper floors were burned alive instantly, while others died when boiling water from burst tanks scalded them. Survivors described blackened handprints fused to ceilings, corpses melted together into blocks of flesh, and a layer of human fat floating on the water pumped in by firefighters. The U.S. military later said they believed the shelter had been turned into a military command post, and they pointed to intercepted signals and surveillance reports as proof. But even some senior U.S. officers doubted this evidence, calling it circumstantial. Human Rights Watch and journalists who visited the site found no trace of military use, and they reported that the shelter was clearly marked as a civilian refuge. Today, the ruins stand as a memorial, with photographs of the dead on the walls. Charred handprints and burned ceilings remain in place. A woman named Greta, who lost 8 children in the bombing, became the caretaker and guide for visitors. Laconia Incident. On the 12th of September 1942, the German submarine U-156 torpedoed the British ship RMS Laconia off the coast of West Africa. Because the Laconia was armed, it was considered a normal legal military target. But once the submarine's commander, Werner Hartenstein, realized that most of the people in the water were Italian prisoners of war and civilians, he began a rescue effort. He sent open radio messages in English giving his position, promised not to attack, and called for help. Other submarines came to assist and collect the survivors. The rescue scene was chaotic, as the Laconia had tilted so badly that many of its lifeboats could not be launched. Prisoners locked below broke out, and desperate fights erupted as they rushed towards the boats to save their lives. Some men were bayoneted as they tried to reach the boats, while others were slashed or shot when climbing aboard. Sharks circled in the bloody water. U-156 stayed on the surface, carrying nearly 200 survivors on its deck and towing more in lifeboats. Then, on the 16th of September, a US B-24 bomber spotted the submarine. It saw the Red Cross flag and even received signals in English, some from Hartenstein himself, others from a British officer aboard, explaining that there were survivors, including women and children. The aircrew reported this, but their commander ordered an attack. Bombs and depth charges fell among the lifeboats, killing many people, and forced U-156 to release the survivors and dive to save itself. Other submarines continued the rescue, but still, the death toll was staggering. Out of 2,732 people on the Laconia, only about 976 to 1,083 survived, and between 1,658 and 1,757 died, most of them Italian prisoners of war. Meanwhile, the American airmen reported that they had sunk U-156, received medals for the attack, and faced no investigation or punishment. The case was quietly dropped. The bombing of a rescue effort shocked the German Navy, and because of this, on September 17th, Grand Admiral Karl Donitz issued the Laconia Order, forbidding U-boats from rescuing survivors. From then on, German submarines followed a policy of unrestricted submarine warfare. The order became a central issue at the Nuremberg trials, where prosecutors argued that Donitz and his submariners had committed war crimes. However, the move backfired once the full story of the Laconia incident and Allied practices came out. The tribunal criticized the order for being harsh and unclear, but did not add extra punishment to Donitz's sentence for this charge. Legal experts later judged the American attack on U-156 as a clear example of a war crime. Under international law, enemy submarines rescuing survivors under a Red Cross flag are not lawful targets while doing so. Maywand Kill Team. A 15-year-old Afghan boy was working in a field when U.S. soldiers threw a grenade at him, shot him, and then posed for photos with his body. The sergeant then cut off his little finger as a trophy. That was the beginning of the Maywand district murders, a series of killings carried out in 2010 by a self-named kill team. from the U.S. Army's 3rd Platoon, Bravo Company. A month later, soldiers killed a 22-year-old man, who was later believed to have been deaf or mentally disabled and kept part of his skull. Keeping body parts as trophies was a recurring characteristic of these killings. Then they killed Mullah Adadad with a grenade and gunfire in front of his family. Once again, they amputated a finger and kept it. When local elders complained that Adadad had been unarmed, a platoon leader came back to the village and told residents the man had acted aggressively, insisting the unit did not kill people randomly. However, photos later published by Der Spiegel and Rolling Stone told another story. They showed soldiers smiling over corpses, holding body parts, and even 2 Afghans cuffed together beside a sign that read, "Talibans are dead." Senior NATO officials in Kabul compared the images to the infamous Abu Ghraib prison photos. The truth finally came out because a soldier reported the crimes to his superiors, after he had first been beaten by fellow soldiers for speaking up. Another soldier had also tried to raise alarm months earlier by telling his father, who called military hotlines in the US but got no response. Once the army acted, charges spread across the platoon. 5 soldiers were charged with murder, and 7 more faced charges for drug use, assaults, obstruction, and covering up the crimes. In court, one of them, a 22-year-old soldier, admitted guilt to 3 premeditated murders and told the judge the plan was to kill people. He was sentenced to 24 years and agreed to testify against the others. In the end, 11 of the 12 soldiers charged were convicted of crimes connected to the killings or the cover-up, with some receiving life sentences and others lighter punishments. Phoenix Program. The Phoenix Program was created to find and destroy the Viet Cong's political network hidden among ordinary civilians. The idea was straightforward but ruthless. The Viet Cong were not only strong because of their fighters in the jungle, but they also had a hidden system inside their communities. This infrastructure included people who recruited new members, gathered information, spread propaganda, moved supplies, and replaced local leaders with their own. Phoenix was built to break that system, and it used infiltration, capture, interrogation, and targeted killings. Success was measured by how many people were neutralized, with that word covering different outcomes: prison, defection, or death. From 1968 to 1972, they claimed to have neutralized 81,740 suspected Viet Cong, including 26,369 killed. About 87% of those deaths were officially recorded as happening during regular South Vietnamese and American military operations, while the rest were attributed directly to Phoenix operatives. To carry this out, Phoenix relied on provincial reconnaissance units, or PRUs, and a network of interrogation centers. PRU teams grabbed suspects or raided homes where they believed Viet Cong cadres lived. Then, interrogators tried to force out names and structures for the next round of raids. On paper, there were rules. For example, some special laws said that 3 different sources were needed to accuse someone. In practice, though, things were far harsher. Large sweeps often dragged in innocent people. Information gained under interrogation was used to guide search and destroy missions, and torture was part of the process in South Vietnamese centers, with Americans often supervising. Witnesses later described beatings, electric shocks to genitals, water torture, suspension by ropes, and even deaths during questioning. Some extreme claims about Phoenix were later questioned, but even inside the program's own records, there was no doubt about the larger pattern of cruelty. For example,